in the room, please drop in your name, pronouns, and where you're from in the chat. If you have any questions or feedback that you want regarding the legislation, we can chat about that. Not promising I can answer everything. But my name is Chelsea Higgs Wise. If you don't know me, I am one of the co-founders of Marijuana Justice. It is Saturday, January 16th. We are now in our first week of the 2021 Virginia General Assembly session, and we're here to talk about legalization of marijuana. Just to give you a little background of Marijuana Justice, we were founded in 2019 with Black organizers, and we really joined the call to answer the Commonwealth's promise and commitment to restitution, reinvestment, and reconciliation after the 400 years since Africans were trafficked to our Virginia shores to really begin the legacy of enslavement and what we see today after Jim Crow and many different iterations of racism right here in the South. Well, we are the birthplace of that. We are the oldest legislature within our entire United States of America. And right now here in Virginia, we really want to understand that we are on stolen land, Powhatan land. If you do not know where you are and what type of indigenous place that you stay on right now, please look that up, because that is an interesting and part of the conversation that we have with marijuana all of the time, of how we are continuing to tell the story of where the land came from and how we are now using the land to either continue to exploit our people and advance capitalism, and what that looks like 400 years later. And that's a very heavy conversation from when we're talking about a plant that is really something that we've taken as a herbal piece, that we've taken as medicine, and states like the Commonwealth of Virginia have used to criminalize Black and brown people now for decades. Particularly here in Virginia, you may know that in the last couple decades, Virginia has actually tripled down on our arrests for marijuana possession. Over the last few years, we have arrested over 20 to 30,000 people a year for possession of marijuana alone. And this has been happening, whereas other states have been legalizing and making money and having very accessible markets to cannabis industry. And we are continuing to lock people up. But when we looked at who was being locked up, we of course saw, just as we see across any particular law in the South, of who feels it the most, it is going to be the people that live on those margins, and particularly Black and brown indigenous people. So that is exactly what has happened. In Virginia particularly, you are 3.6 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana in Virginia. You are 3.9% more likely to be convicted in Virginia for marijuana. And just depending on where you are in Virginia, it really depends on the disparity, right? And that disparity number depends on, it really explains the difference of how Black folks are treated and how white folks are treated when it comes to this plant. So marijuana justice is really rooted in that type of history. So as we talk and as we continue to expand on the conversation, we do remember that we are justice rooted. And as this plant becomes the capital market, are our people being free? Are our records being expunged? And our stories really being centered so that we are able to have a full conversation to say, are we being reinvested in, or are we really making intentional steps to not repeat the harms of the past? And what we've seen across the nation and across the advocacy lines is that there is a certain infrastructure that really needs to be set up so that there is oversight of where these monies and profits and revenues go, as well as how these licenses are being spread out and what the language says in the legislation that starts it all. So if you have seen, just this week, legislation came out. There are a few different bills for legislation and the Virginia General Assembly, for legalization. We are really focusing on, when we talk about the bills, we are more than likely, unless we say otherwise, speaking about the governor's and the administration's bills. We know with the governor behind these particular bills, there's a certain level of influence that is where we will be working from. You will see that Delegate Heretic also out of the 757 has a legalization bill on the table. And then also in the Senate, Senator Morrissey also has a bill, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But the bills I really want you to encourage you to look up is in the Senate. It's Senator Evans' bill. I'm going to get that number to you right now. I have not yet memorized all the numbers, but it's Senate Bill 1406. I'm going to actually drop that link in the Zoom chat. Thanks so much for everyone that is joining us live right now. If you're watching a replay, we will make sure that we can get this to you, but you can go to lis.virginia.gov, and the little search bar up there, you can say SB 1406, and this is how you can look up the bills. If you all have any questions about the bills or how to navigate the LIS system, which is the Legislative Information Services System, please give THC Justice Now a DM. I'd be more than happy to help you all look at the system. It's really important that we have access to learn to understand the bill language and just be able to find where the bills are, because there are a few different ones, and the process of this is what we will be talking about. I want to encourage everyone to please visit the Brown Virginia Facebook page, Brown Virginia website. I will drop the link right here. Asma, if you don't mind, if you can find the Brown Virginia registration link for Monday, the MLK link, and we can drop that in the chat. If you have time this Monday from 9 to like 2 p.m., we are going to have a full MLK Day of Action where you can hear from the legislators, you can hear from the administration, and these are going to be bills from across the spectrum. Marijuana Justice is just one of the many partners. So they're going to be bills that talks about your interest in many other things besides cannabis. So MLK Day, if you're not aware, is a major quote unquote lobby day where normally we are taking over the Capitol and the legislators hear our voices, and many of the Black and Brown, Indigenous, Latinx communities and advocacy groups would come together, and under the branches, particularly of Brown Virginia, Black folks would come together and say, these were our issues that are really important to us, and we're doing that again this year. So you can register for the virtual event for the MLK Day. Myself, I'm really excited to be part of the lunch panel that is happening at 12, as well as Rise for Youth, one of our partners, and a couple other people. We were talking about that. And then if you use the Hopin app, y'all, I'm going to really encourage us to get in this virtual world. If you're using the Hopin app and not just the streaming, you'll be able to sign in into the exhibition rooms. Marijuana Justice will have our own room. It's kind of like a vendor booth when you would have it in person. And so now you can like visit the different rooms of the orgs and ask them questions, ask them, a little bit more about what they're looking for right now and even after session, remembering that this is a short session. They have voted to extend it, so it will be 45 days, but that just means that we will be over at the end of February. That's going to be over before we know it, y'all. So again, on Monday, MLK Day, Day of Action. Please tune in. You don't have to do the whole day. Just, find the people that you want to listen to and visit those exhibition rooms. Visit Marijuana Justice exhibition room so we can talk a little bit more. Every day we're finding out more information. So the link for the MLK Day is in there. Please visit and sign up. I know that they already have more than 500 people ready to register, and that was almost a week ago, so I can't imagine those numbers. A little bit about the legislation that is proposed right now. I want to be very honest that it is 400 pages. Marijuana Justice is in very close partnership with ACLU Virginia. We received the legislation Wednesday evening. Everyone, thank you that joined us Thursday for our panel, but we are still continuing to work with our team to go through the 400 pages to really have a great analysis of what we're looking for with our recommendations. Of course, right away, the things that we aren't super happy about is that it's under the ABC regulation. So now under the ABC board, they want to rename it under the Cannabis. And that was something that we never wanted, particularly from our lens, because of the enforcement laws and that the cops are very much part of ABC. We wanted a very separate board because what we know is that there are just not many people that understand how to enforce cannabis with a different lens that's not criminalizing, right? And if this is now an industry, this is not something that we should be policing in the mind that we're looking at the criminal punishment system. And unfortunately, with something that's already been set up in Virginia, we've talked about the historic legacy that we have in our mindset and how that means that we legislate. We're looking for a new infrastructure. So right away, we're not super happy about that. There's no new repeal. Like, we wanted to really repeal the prohibition of simple possession. That is not the case. Everything is still truly a simple civil penalty, which means that we will have to interact with law enforcement, and that just ups our risk of more severe consequences. And there's just a slew of new crimes. If you've been following our work with ACLU or Marijuana Justice, you've seen that we've been advocating for no new crimes. If we are legalizing marijuana, why are we creating all of these crimes around enforcing marijuana? And there are ways to do this around other substances that we do already with narcotics and things that don't necessarily need a roadside test like we do with alcohol. So there are some things that we're really still pushing out. Right away, we really want to be able to push the criminal justice piece. When we're looking at the repair model and expungements, we see that they're really only offering automatic expungements of misdemeanors. If you're talking about the collateral consequences, we know that that's just not enough. Thank you also being here, remembering that our Marijuana Justice Legalize It Right campaign is to repeal, repair, and reparations. So the repeal part isn't quite there. The repair part with our expungements isn't quite there. And I'm gonna be very honest, is that the reparations and how our social equity and the licensing and the entire market is just not spelled out enough for us right now, and we have a lot more questions coming. So please tune in next week to the Virginia General Assembly. We know that the Senate committees will be hearing it on Tuesday and Wednesday, so we'll have more about what those bills look like. As I'm talking and as I'm about to bring on our featured speaker, please make sure you are using the chat function. We're going to be, if you're watching this live, watching this recorded later, please make sure you email us or DM us with any questions, because this is going to be moving very quickly and it's important that we have our input. So everyone, I would like to just very quickly introduce our guest for the evening, or I guess it's the afternoon right here. We're here where Chip is, it's a little earlier, but John Chip Moore is born in San Francisco and he's raised all over the world. Chip Moore has made the Bay Area his home for the last 20 years. After his storied careers in the music and culinary fields, his discerning palette and network of cannabis providers steered him towards consulting opportunities in the cannabis industry, taking on brand activation, marketing, strategy, operational development, logistics, and distribution. He saw a gap in the market. And with expertise in the existing cannabis landscape, Moore founded 4 and 20 Blackbirds, a premier cannabis retail and delivery boutique. With an eye towards vertical integration, Moore formed a cannabis event subsidy company and partnered with Xavier Vega to form Trap Security, an equity distribution and manufacturing company. Moore has been featured in Cannabis Business Experts by BET, Vice News, Comedy Central, as well as the East Bay Express and the San Francisco Chronicle. Moore is a staff featured writer for the International Cannabis Production Skunk magazine and serves on the board of directors for the Ohio Cannabis Industry nonprofit Green Harvest Health Community Foundation. He has so many accolades. I'm being like tripped up on it. And obviously with my brunch in hand, that might have something to do with it. But Chip, I'm gonna just invite you right on in to have this conversation. Welcome so much, Chip. Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you. Let's see if we can get you in. Can y'all hear Chip? No. No, not yet. Technology is so fun, y'all. Let me tell you. I see you are muted now. We're gonna help Chip out here. Let's see what we can do. No problem. No problem. Still not much. Still not much. So we're gonna let. Yeah, we still can't hear you, my man. I don't know what's happening. Can you maybe call in from your phone or try and log out and log back in? Yeah. All right. While we're waiting on Chip, does anybody want to come on, ask any questions, comments? I know a lot of questions have been around home cultivation. Right now they're offering about 4 plants. I saw a question earlier from Jeremy about making this more towards racial justice. A little bit more towards that, as I'm going to really encourage everyone to revisit our petition, as well as mine and Ashna Khanna's editorial in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, where we talked about our values. And really that talks about no new crimes. And number one, there are so many new crimes in the proposed pieces. And one piece that we're really focused on, as well as the criminalization of juveniles. If you were able to tune into our Thursday panel, you were able to really hear that from a value system, if we are legalizing cannabis, but saying that we're criminalizing youth, what is actually the values that we're legislating? Are we just legislating capital, or are we legislating saying we're actually not going to use this plant to criminalize people anymore? And that's a really good question that we have to ask ourselves. And when we talk to folks across the country, they are really worried about the criminal justice pieces here. I'm going to kind of go down a little bit of a legal piece right now. So y'all got to tell me if I'm going too deep, but there's something in here about the presumption clause of intoxication and within this bill. So because there is no roadside test for marijuana, like there is in alcohol, if you are caught with marijuana, which is still a civil penalty, which places in like New Jersey, it's no penalty. A cop literally does not touch you. There's no fine, no fee. It's actually repealed. But in Virginia, that wouldn't be the case. But not only would you be in possession of marijuana, now it is up to the law enforcement, the judge's perception or discretion to say, oh, we're also going to presume that you are high. So now you are now under the influence. So think about what that means. If you're caught with weed, there can now also say you are under the influence of whether you are driving, whether that you are with someone that's underage. There's also a clause in there about like passing a joint to someone that's underage. That's some ridiculous, outrageous piece. There's a lot of new pieces that are discretionary and up to presumption. And what do you all think, and who do you all think will be at the receiving end of those presumptions and those discretionaries from prosecutors and judges? It will be people of color, Black people, and Black youth. So that's something else we really just want to put on people's minds, as we haven't even really looked or talked about publicly the social equity market and the commercial market regulation pieces of it, as we're still really looking and diving into criminal justice. Chip, are we able to get you?
Let's check. Can you hear me now?
Oh, we got you. Yes, perfect.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Good to hear. Sorry about that, everybody. Technical difficulties out this way.
No
but
problem.
Thank you for having me. Like I said, this is a pleasure to be here. And please feel free to ask me anything.
Yeah, no, well, first off, I just am really excited to have you here right at like the peak of legalization with marijuana in Virginia. And, you know, a lot of folks are still really new to this conversation, especially to the business part, which I know you've been kind of in and fighting for a while. But let's kind of first start off with you introducing, you know, how did you get in the space with the plant, and just kind of talk about that a little bit, and like the love for just like, how did you find yourself dealing with cannabis?
You know, I'm old. I'm super grown, and as a teenager, as a young kid, I came across the plant, And it was something that, for me, brought me comfort in my community, brought me closer to even people that were outside of my social circles and norms. So that helped me navigate, different cultural obstacles that I was, placed in anyway. For me, uh, I went to a predominantly white learning institution, and this was the best icebreaker I could have. I used cannabis in my educational navigation for years, so
He says a
I
great
love it really.
icebreaker. I love that. It is a great
Yeah,
icebreaker.
it's true. It's true. I moved mountains by just rolling a little something up, and you know, it's a way for bringing people together.
Hmm.
And through my travels and through I've lived a couple different lifetimes, and I've done a couple different things, within music and within food and within the art world. But cannabis was always there, so I was always able to come back to this first love. And 20 years ago, about I came back to the Bay Area and gave it the attention it deserved. So that's
Great.
kind of my journey, not the legal one, but the one that got me to the door.
Okay. Okay. And I mean, would you mind expanding on the idea of not the legal one, right? I think that's something that a lot of folks just feel a barrier to, because all we know is this like illegal space. So it's hard to imagine us in a legal space, right? And so it's
Right,
really
right.
so I'd
Well,
love for you to see, like, how did you go from like I'm doing this underground, whatever it is, like, to say no, I could also do this legally, this could be my thing.
right. It was a journey,
Mhm.
because for me that was not an option. I was raised in red state Ohio, so it was blue when I was there, but red state Ohio. So uh, there was a stigma
Mhm.
attached to being legal, to being illegal, what
Mhm.
that meant to be in an underground black market community. All those kinds of things were negatives. So when I came to a new place where I had a different or less of a stigma, we still work on it every day.
Mhm.
Um, you're able to educate people. They're able to see cannabis in a different light. And that's your first battle, is the hearts and minds, right? You have to have people look at this plant different.
Mhm.
And, that was part of my journey too. I saw that this plant wasn't just about kicking it Friday and Saturday nights, that this had healing qualities and harmony qualities, and people were able to, bring their communities out of, desperate situations on the back of this plant. And I know this to be true. I've seen the transition. So for me, I'm what they call legacy. I've gone from the black market to the gray medicinal 215 market to the
Mhm.
recreational market.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, not much changes. It's all you're paying somebody else a different tax rate, and you have different regulations, rules, and people you have to answer to. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I know everyone's a lot of questions I get are about that transition, right? I mean, without going too in depth, like what is the like a few steps that you can tell folks that want to get in the business, right? Like what are things that you need to know first before you start getting in the business of cannabis within your state that's really looking for that legalization? And what did you do and what did you try?
well, you know, you're you guys are amazing. Let me just tell you, just sitting in on the beginning of your meeting, the organization and being on top of the legislation and having the people around you who are part of this, that's half the battle. You
Mhm.
guys are already doing the hard work right now. Um, I appreciate it. But a lot of that is the hearts and minds. You have to convince those people in rural communities, in your urban areas. You have to convince those college towns that the plant is safe, that this is something that you can bring into your communities to grow, to manufacture, to distribute, that there's a way for, you know, a large, broad tax base goes a long way when you're talking about education, when you're talking about programs that support communities. And if you frame that within, hey, this plant has the ability to change our community, that's real, that's big. The city of Oakland 15 years ago was tumbleweeds. The downtown Oakland was desperate, but that tax base from cannabis came in and it rejuvenated our communities. And, you know, we are Oakland, the greater East Bay area now because of the renaissance that cannabis provided. Make no mistake, we've been here 20 plus years, you know, contributing to a tax base and have made this, rejuvenated the city.
And you're talking about the hearts and minds. Well, we have a lot of those same like rural areas here in Virginia, like in Richmond, we've got some urban spaces, Northern Virginia and 757, but everywhere else in Virginia is very, very rural. And if you're not involved in the General Assembly, that means number one, you're lucky. But number two, that means that you're not necessarily hearing how conservative truly, even though Virginia is a blue state, how conservative we really truly are. And so what you're talking about, Chip, is this still this like cop in a lot of folks' minds around the plant of when we see it, what does it mean, who should grow it, and in our own community as Black folks, like a lot of our religious older folks communities, that's something they pull me to the side and like, I don't know if we can get on this. I mean, Chip, my man, unless we all talking here, a lot of folks are like, well, Chelsea, you got to make this about prison reform. I'm like, this is about prison reform.
Yes, it is.
Prison reform, but it's not actually even enough out there for them to get on because cannabis is still this like, you know, this lazy, have fun, giggly thing rather than us reclaiming something. And so I think something that when we look forward about changing people's minds is that in Virginia and the legislation right now, I'm going to keep bringing up little parts of the proposed legislations as we talk. It says that we would be going in 2023, y'all. And so our question at Marijuana Justice and ACLU and our partners with Rise for Youth, like how are we going to be treating people from the point of when we pass this bill to when we open up in a commercial market? Are we going to be continuing to criminalize people? According to the bill, it looks like it. Are we going to continue to change these hearts and minds about how we feel about the plant? And that goes a very different way of just how we sell it, right? It's going to mean how we treat people that are in proximity to it. Go ahead.
So what I'd point to when you're having those discussions is Oklahoma right now. Oklahoma is a red state. However, they have deregulated the cannabis industry, have made it very easy, no obstacles or barriers to entry, and have asked, especially from highly saturated cannabis areas, for us to come on in. So Oklahoma has taken a very red state approach, and it has worked out for them. You know,
Chip,
go ahead.
Can you explain a little bit more about the approach with Oklahoma for people that don't know and like how different it is for folks?
Sure. Well, it's very different from our California perspective. California is a highly regulated cannabis industry. There's only probably nuclear waste that has more regulations in California than cannabis. So it's tough.
Damn.
And they've made it very tough because when you have more regulation, that costs more money. So creates a lot of barriers to entry. Oklahoma said, no, we don't need any of that. We're going to let you guys come on in. We're going to make sure that, you know, as long as you're providing to the tax base, that you can go ahead and do whatever you want in this space. So very different approach.
So are there any like cap licenses? Are there a certain number of licenses that Oklahoma has? Nope, there are no caps, y'all. So like you're gonna hear
Wild West.
you're going to hear a lot of states, including the Commonwealth, they'll probably say, like, even with our medical industry right now, there are only 5 medical licenses available, right? In a place like Oklahoma, what Chip is talking about, there's no, like, literally anyone can apply. There's no limit to it. And right now, and it's a horizontal integration. Right. What do you say?
Yeah, there's hundreds and hundreds.
There's just so many, and it's still, they still are making money. People are doing well. And it's literally not an argument for why we wouldn't be doing more of what Oklahoma is doing. Now, Chip, I'm going to just say from my own personal commentary, it's just, there's not a lot of Black people in Oklahoma. I was like, is that the difference? Like, that's just my own thing.
You're coming.
Sorry?
We're coming now. A lot of us from California. I said a lot of us from California.
That's true. That's true.
You know,
that's true. Hey, we can gentrify something.
It's happening. I see it. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. We see opportunity.
Come on. So tell the people a little bit about your business, about what you're doing right now. And I know I heard a podcast that we'll also share that you were on a couple years ago that was really talking about your fight. So would you mind kind of giving us a little bit about that fight? And we'll make sure we'll share that podcast as well in the chat for folks, and then talk about what you're doing a little bit now.
Yeah, I am still fighting. I fight every day. I fight for not only my businesses, where I try to vertically integrate as many of the permits as I can have. My equity business.
Chip, I'm going to have to stop you.
Go ahead.
A lot of folks in Virginia, we're not quite sure about a lot of the cannabis lingo. So I'm going to have to stop you. So tell folks about, what is vertical integration? Can you tell folks what is
vertical integration? Sure. Vertical integration is when you have permits from seed to sale. So I'm able to cultivate, I'm able to manufacture, process, distribute. I'm able to put it on my own shelves, either through my dispensary or through my delivery business. So that's the goal. And the reason that's the goal here in my market is because that's how we're able to create enough money on the margins to make a profit. So that's just the realness of the cannabis industry. Everybody's like, oh, this money grows on trees. Not really. This is a burgeoning industry with a lot of competition and a lot of saturation. So you have to find your place, you have to find your niche, and then you have to, execute well. So that's the way that brown and Black people of color and our allies will survive in this space. That's the tea. That's the menu. That's the recipe. So vertical integration is the goal. Okay. We strive for it.
So
I have 6.
Can I ask, should we want vertical integration now? I would say that our medical folks are vertically integrated, our big corporations are vertically integrated. Does it matter if they're vertically integrated and we are vertically integrated? Does it have the same outcome?
It will help you survive. So when you say the big boys are vertically integrated, that what I'm essentially telling you right now is they're positioning to push every small player out of the market. The way that the small players survive is do what you're doing right now. It's organizing, it's collecting your power, and is being able to, corner this part of the industry in your marketplace right now. Whether it's through legislation, whether it's for making enough noise and saying this is yours, whatever it takes, now is your time. And I wish I was there with y'all. It's exciting. You get to take the fight to them.
Yeah.
With the tool.
It's really great. And what I've been telling everyone, if you're listening to this, there is really room for all of us in this fight, especially if we bring a cooperative mindset, a collective mindset, this building power of what everyone can do, because cannabis is just another business industry, and it's got to touch almost everything that we touch every day, right? As a consumer economy, this is just something else that we're going to consume, and we can get that dollar on that. What would you tell folks?
The approach.
Mhm.
Go ahead. Come on.
Okay. I see we got a little lag, so I want to make sure we hear each other. But I was going to say, what would you tell folks right now for what to tell legislators? What should legislators be hearing from people?
That you're going to need their support down the line. One, you want them not to switch the legislation midstream. When they tell you this is what it's going to be, this is what you're looking for, you have to position yourselves at that time to make it happen, to even compete. So if they say, hey, you got to make a plane, build a plane right now, don't let them say it's a boat when you're about to take off. You've got to be on the same page because it will get that tight.
Mm-hmm.
You're also with your culture and with Virginia and with the tobacco, you guys get a whole new narrative. You get to tell these lawmakers there's a way that your reparations can come through, like through land, through this plant, through changing the story. You get a new narrative between a plant and our people.
Mm-hmm.
That's big.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, make them feel guilty. Put the pressure on every one of those legislators. They know they have the funds.
Yeah.
You're going to need funds too. So tell them down the line, no one else is going to finance you guys. No one else is going to take the shot. So you're going to have to come for them for that cash too.
Great.
And don't feel bad.
Oh no, we definitely don't. But it is going to be important that we know how to ask for it. And so what you're saying right now is to be able to watch the legislation. And that's something really important that we do too, is making sure that we can read in the legislation how those monies and the tax revenue is going to actually reach the people. And if we can't read it in the legislation, that means it doesn't exist, y'all. And many people, I think, just assume that the government knows and is it all worked out. And as many folks like Chip and have just been involved in this, is that government officials are making it up as they go, or someone is telling them, and those folks may not be in our best interest.
Mm-hmm.
So
you literally are their best resource. So you need to tell them what they need to know.
Right.
And they have no concept of you're going to be taking away a black market, transitioning from a gray market. There's a collateral impact. You want to be prepared for that too. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to deal with people who aren't going to be expunged by the timeline you want, but maybe you want to bring them in for the vocational training, for those things we talked about, that cannabis can help out our community. That's the funding you're going to ask for from these guys too. So,
yeah,
we're finally getting ours now.
Right. It's been a long road for y'all in California.
It's been an interesting one, for sure.
Yeah. What would be like maybe one or two things that you would say we got to really make sure we get in legislation, or one thing we got to keep out of legislation?
That's a good one. So you want to have a grace period before large corporations can come in and even enter the cannabis industry in Virginia. So we were supposed to have a 3-year grace period, but there were big companies who came in while the legislation was being written and created loopholes. So, you got to watch out for that stuff. But, that 3-year grace period gives you time to build businesses, build brands, create a value that really they're looking for other bigger businesses to either buy you out or invest. So, yeah, you're supposed to give you a head start, but it's not really what you think it is. Also, they're going to try and put all your businesses in the worst neighborhoods. They're also not going to give you real police protection, although you're going to be giving them all this funding. So you have to fight for those things too. They're going to say, hey, you're a cannabis industry. We're going to put you in our most despot neighborhoods and areas, and you're going to help us rebuild these neighborhoods. Well, it's very dangerous with cash businesses in, hard stressed economic neighborhoods. So you
Right.
also have to think about that too.
Can you quickly touch on, you mentioned cash businesses, why, inform the people really quickly why you say it's a cash business right now with the federal government?
Right. So unfortunately, because cannabis is still a Schedule One drug, it's a narcotic, which makes it illegal. So no banks really want to work with us. Now there are tricks around banking, but it's very complicated. It's not worth, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and most of us have to work in cash. So we pay our taxes. And you go down to the city of Oakland with a big brown paper bag full of cash. That's how our transactions are done. It's dangerous. It's not really viable for large scale growth when you're carrying paper bags of thousands of dollars around. So, there's a stigma, there's a security issue, there's no real banking. All these things for us have slowed us down.
Right.
California is talking about coming up with a state bank for cannabis. Also, Kamala, says she is going to help us with cannabis banking. So we'll see. We'll look forward to that if that goes down.
Yeah. I mean, there's been some big talk after they, pushed the Morehouse Act through the House right before the year ended. There was some big talk about what this new Congress could do at a federal level with cannabis. So we'll definitely be keeping our eye open. We saw that there was a conflict there in the MORE Act that did pass that would leave out folks with prior records to be able to participate in the industry. We heard that very loud and clear from advocates on the national level when the MORE Act passed the House. So we'll keep folks involved in that. But what we've heard at a federal level is that there will be possibly a new bill that would not include this new amendment that was talked about. What Chip just said about making sure what they told you would be in the bill stays in the bill and doesn't evolve, that's exactly what happened with the MORE Act on the federal level. They were making it better right before they voted on it, and somebody slipped something else in there right in to keep out people with prior records, and they didn't, and a lot of advocates didn't realize it until like the day before they were voting on it. And so it's very, very tricky with these legislators, and it happens on the state level as well right here in Virginia, which is why we're really grateful for everyone, particularly at ACLU Virginia, that's diving into that legislation and looking at the very, very deep parts of the 400-page bill here in Virginia. Chip, is there anything else that you want to say to folks here? Give a shout out to what you're doing really fast in California too, and let people know.
Sure. First, I'd like to say thanks for having me. It was really great to see the energy you guys have from across the country making this happen. That re-energizes us. We've been beaten, battled, and bloodied in this thing. But we've also learned that there is a place for us here. Cannabis, which is 97% white industry, is finally getting its due, and there is a reckoning. But unless we take full advantage of this pause and get the legislation and get the organizers like yourselves involved and collaborating, we can miss this window. So my whole thing is, we're here, we're right now, strike while the iron's hot. I'm gonna be watching you guys. It's very exciting.
It's very, very exciting. And I see in the comments that everyone should watch Grass is Greener on Netflix. That's a definite yes. I think it came out on 4/20/2019. It's a very, very good film, a documentary about the timeline of the criminalization on cannabis If you also missed on BET, they had Marijuana and Black People. That was a film that Nas put together that came out just last year or last month, I believe. So this narrative about cannabis and marijuana and our criminalization and how we got here, and kind of realizing, hey, these coins should be ours.
It's all.
We're having this reckoning. So we're excited to be here in the Commonwealth to hold down this space, particularly for Black, Latinx, Indigenous folks, queer folks. I mean, we're really, really trying to make sure that we're involved, because we've been the ones that have been involved in the criminal punishment system due to this plant. So Chip Moore, I'm really happy for you being here. Thanks so much for being connected with us. Tell people how to follow you and how to get in touch with you if they have any questions.
Sure. You can find me on the gram pretty easily. Also Twitter, all of them same handle. It's Mr. Dabahashery, which is MrDabahashery. And thank you very much for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Great. Well, and I'm going to drop his IG in the chat right there too, in case you missed it. And you can follow Chip for more. Thank you so much, Chip. And we'll be in touch.
Sounds great. I look forward to it.
Thanks.
Take care, y'all.
Thanks. I'm going to stay on for just another second. If anybody has any questions, particularly around what's happening, please, I'm going to drop in the actual bill. If I did that before, I'm going to drop it in again. This is the bill that we're looking at. It is in the Senate with Senator Evans. This is what the administration is saying, that the bill that they've worked on as well. I mentioned earlier that there was a bill from Joe Morrissey that also included expungements. That was an interesting topic, y'all. One thing I will say about Senator Morrissey's legalization bill is that the expungements include certain felony convictions, and felony convictions are really what impact people's housing, people's jobs, people's school. And so this particular piece of legislation that he has around expungements could reach more collateral consequences. Now, what unfortunately he has in the bill is that you would have to pay your fines and fees before those records are expunged, which is ridiculous because we wouldn't have to pay nothing. But these are the conversations and almost like the sacrifices that we're having to talk about with legislators. Because right now in the governor's bill, they're only automatically expunging misdemeanors. And I want to remind everyone that prior to 2020, anything over half an ounce could have been charged as a felony. Imagine you getting a felony for anything over half an ounce and your entire life being disrupted for 3/4 of an ounce of marijuana. In states like New Jersey, in December, just last month, passed bills with no fines, no fees, no penalties for 6 pounds. Y'all. It's time that we come together and really say we've got to actually legalize this with values that don't continue to criminalize us. There's no amount of money or an inclusion or business loans or grants that are going to make up for the disparities that happen if we don't actually decriminalize marijuana, not just in the legislation of possession, but also in our child welfare, social services, and the way that we are qualified for jobs. There are still ways that we will be criminalized, right? For past records, for using, for having it on us. And if we don't read that and fight really hard to not only decriminalize them, but also to strip the records, then we're not going to be able to be included anyway. And that just means that they're going to be able to make their money. They're going to be able to make their profit. And the labor of us and what we're putting in this is going to be nothing. Or we might have access to legal marijuana, but we won't have access to the capital of it. And we will still have a lot of access to the law enforcement that's regulating it. So that is my call and ask for everyone to please sign our petition if you have not. If you can share it with someone that maybe has not signed it yet, I'm going to drop it in the chat. We're really asking for folks to get involved and to let folks know. Is Evansville? Yes, it is the same bill that is introduced, Marius. That is the same bill. Yep. I'm dropping in this petition. Sorry, I got a little distracted. We'll let Gina back in. All right. So it is the same bill. And then there's a bill by Delegate Heretic as well. But I'm asking everyone to please focus on Evansville. That's something that we will be watching and that they put a lot of effort into. And please invite everyone next week, 3 p.m. right here. The link to register is going to be in our Instagram. If you have any questions, let us know. We're going to be doing these every week and featuring speakers. Sometimes we'll have updates and sometimes we'll be like, legislators aren't telling us anything. That just means they need to hear from you. So we'll catch you right here next week. And make sure that you're following our contact. Sure. Our contact is, my email is chelsea@marijuanajustice.org. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. And if you DM us on Instagram, we really try and get to you. And if you follow me on my personal Instagram too, I'm pretty accessible there. We really want to be able to reach out and answer your questions in these next few weeks, because it's going to happen really fast, y'all. And just remember that there is a gubernatorial race that's happening. The primary is in June, and that just means that sometimes these things can be a little political, and that just means our voices need to be heard that much more. So I'm really excited to have you all involved and to see more of you all next week, Saturday at 3 p.m. right here on CannaHour with our updates. And I will see y'all next week. Holla back. Thanks, y'all.